Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. I am Dr. Asma Sadiq from Anatomy Department. In my previous lecture, we have already discussed with the embryological origin and fate of the aortic arches during the development of vascular system. Today I am going to discuss with you the clinical correlations and the congenital anomalies associated with that development of aortic arches and its derivatives. In the previous lecture, you have seen that there are 6 pharyngeal arches, and all of these 6 pairs of pharyngeal arches have their own 6 pairs of arterial aortic arches. These arterial aortic arches are originating from the aortic sac, which is the most terminal and distal portion of truncus arteriosus, and then these are going to connect with the dorsal aorta on each side. There are a pair of dorsal aorta running on each right and left side. So you have seen these dotted areas and these dotted lines. These are indicating all those structures which are going to disappear and regress. So initially, from the first and second arch, most of its component is going to disappear. The first arch is only persist as the maxillary artery, and second arch has only the stapedial artery as its derivatives. Then you have seen that the third aortic arch, that is going to give you this common carotid artery on each side, and then the proximal part of the internal carotid artery. The distal part of the internal carotid artery was formed by the dorsal aorta. This is the dorsal aorta that has shown you here, and this is giving rise the internal carotid artery more distally. And external carotid artery, it is the branch and sprouting out from the common carotid artery. Then towards the fourth aortic arch, you have seen that this fourth aortic arch has different fate on the right and left side. In the left side, this is giving rise this arch of aorta, the portion which is between the common carotid artery and this left subclavian artery. This is the portion which is formed by the fourth aortic arch. This is giving rise arch of aorta. And on the left side, there is the right subclavian artery which is going to form. But you must note here that these in more proximal portion, which are the shown here, these are the horns of the aortic sac, the right horn and the left horn. The left horn of the aortic sac is giving rise the proximal part of arch of aorta. Then there is this part from the fourth aortic arch, and then there was this portion which is formed by the dorsal aorta. So that's how the arch of aorta is completed on the left side. And in the right side, this right horn of the aortic sac is giving rise the brachiocephalic artery, and then it is giving rise the proximal part of the right subclavian artery from the fourth aortic arch. This is completed on the right side by the combination of the more distal part of the dorsal aorta on the right side and this seventh intersegmental artery. This is now completely giving rise the right subclavian artery. And you have seen this portion which is between the dorsal aorta, between third and fourth aortic arch here on the right and left side both. This is known as carotid duct, and that is going to disappear. And again here, this portion of the dorsal aorta, which is the you can see here, that is also going to obliterated. Now the fifth arch is completely regressed and disappear, and from the sixth arch you are going to have right pulmonary artery from its proximal part, and this distal part of the sixth aortic arch disappeared. And on the left side, this is giving rise left pulmonary artery plus this ligamentum arteriosum. Then what is going to happen, that this portion, which is the part of the dorsal aorta beyond that sixth aortic arch, this is going to unite with its corresponding dorsal aorta on the left side. So both dorsal aortae on each side are going to unite and making here a single artery, single vessel. So that point of the dorsal aorta, which is going to join with the left sided dorsal aorta, it is also going to obliterate. So the junction point beyond this seventh intersegmental artery towards that left dorsal aorta, this vessel which is making that junction, it is also going to disappear, and this is the part of the right dorsal aorta. So you must keep this portion in mind. We are going to deal with that to tell about one congenital anomaly because of persistent of this right dorsal aorta, and you have to focus on this formation of the right subclavian artery and the arch of aorta. So by focusing on all the formation of these vessels, now moving on to the so first of all, the ligament, the ductus arteriosus, which you have seen, it is between the left pulmonary artery and arch of aorta. So this ductus arteriosus, normally it is going to close after birth. Just after birth, there is a closure of the ductus arteriosus, which is because of the constriction and contraction of the muscles in the wall of the ductus arteriosus. So this ductus arteriosus, it is going to become fibrosed because of the constriction of the muscles in it, and then it is closed and known as ligamentum arteriosum. So there is an anomaly where there is patent ductus arteriosus. When the ductus arteriosus, it is going to remain open and it is persistent, then we label that this is patent ductus arteriosus, and this is very common anomaly, and it is more common in females than the males. This is going to be in 8 infants per 10,000 births. This is mostly seen in the immature infants, where there is the immature births, as well as the mothers which are going to have infection with rubella. So maternal rubella infection is also one of the cause of patent ductus arteriosus. Most common is the premature infants which are going to born before their time of birth, and the infants which are born at high altitudes. So the most important you can say cause of its persistent ductus arteriosus is the hypoxia. Hypoxia and immaturity, that is the main causes which are going to remain these ductus arteriosus patent. If we want to make the ductus arteriosus patent, then this can be induced by prostaglandins. The prostaglandin E2 can be used to make it open. And if it is not going to closed, then indomethacin is very important, which is used to induce its closure. The next very important anomaly, that is the coarctation of aorta. Coarctation of aorta is actually the narrowing of the wall of the or lumen of the aorta. It occurs 3.2 per 10,000 births, and in this case the aortic lumen mostly below the origin of the left subclavian artery is significantly going to be narrowed. So you must remember that it is mostly below the origin of the left subclavian artery when the lumen of the aorta is narrowed. It is of two types, preductal and postductal, and it depends upon its origin and its emergence. If it is before the ductus arteriosus, then this is preductal, and if the narrowing is after the beyond the ductus arteriosus, then this is postductal type of coarctation of aorta. The main cause of this coarctation or narrowing of the aorta is primarily because of abnormality in the media of the aorta. So the tunica media of the aorta, it has the abnormality, it is having the constriction, and it is followed by the proliferation in the tunica intima of the aorta. So it gets proliferated and increasing the narrowing. If there is a preductal type of the ductus coarctation of aorta, then in this case the ductus arteriosus, it remain patent. So ductus arteriosus persists in case of preductal type when the narrowing of the aorta is before the ductus arteriosus. In that case the ductus arteriosus persists to allow. And if the coarctation of aorta is postductal type, which is the most common variety and most commonly seen, in this case the ductus arteriosus is going to be obliterated as normal in the fetus, and there is the establishment of collateral circulation between the proximal and distal parts of aorta. How this is going to be possible? There is the intercostal vessels and internal thoracic arteries, they are going to make the collateral circulation and helping in the flow of the blood to the lower part of the body. So you can see here that is having very important sign in the coarctation, that there is increased blood flow towards the upper limb. It has normal or increased blood flow, but the blood pressure towards the lower limb is reduced. So there is radiofemoral delay in case of coarctation of aorta. When you are taking the pulse, radial pulse, it will be normal or rapid, and the femoral pulse is delayed, which is known as radiofemoral delay because of this coarctation of aorta. So you can see here the two varieties of the coarctation. This is the ductus arteriosus from the arch of aorta towards the left pulmonary artery, and if here this is the constriction in aorta, that is known as preductal, and you can also notice that is the left subclavian artery. So beyond the left subclavian artery, distal to that, there will be the constriction most of the time, and here this is the ductus arteriosus, and after that here if there is constriction, this is postductal type of coarctation. So in this preductal coarctation, ductus arteriosus is going to remain patent, and in this postductal type there will be normal closure of ductus arteriosus, and there is establishment of collateral circulation, as you can see here. In this case you can see that this is now the postductal variety, and there you can see these intercostal vessels along with the thoracic other vessels, they are making this improved and circulation through this blood vessel that is going to open up into the subclavian artery, and then it has its connection with the inferior epigastric artery down here to supply the blood to the lower limb as well. So this is having from here you can see it has normally supplied towards the upper limb, And then for the lower limb there is this collateral circulation. I hope you have studied them in detail in the region of thorax during the gross anatomy of the thorax, this type of the collateral circulation. Then this one is the preductal type, and in this preductal type you can see there is the ductus arteriosus, it remains patent, and the flow of the blood from the pulmonary artery is going rapidly down along with it. The next one, you can say there is the double aortic arch. So just have a think in your mind how this double aortic arch is possible. So for that, first of all, recall the aortic arch is formed by three sources. One from the left horn of the aortic sac, number two is the fourth aortic arch, and number three from the dorsal aorta. So when there is a double aortic arch, that means this arch of aorta is not only formed on the left side, it is also going to be formed towards the right side as well. So with the double aortic arch, the right dorsal aorta persists between the origin of the seventh intersegmental artery and its junction with the left dorsal aorta, as I have told you that you must focus on that area, that dotted area which I have shown you here. Then vascular ring that is formed, and it surrounds the trachea and esophagus, and it compresses these structures, so leading to the breathing difficulties and difficulty in swallowing. So how this can happen? Now you can see here, this is the double aortic arch. So that portion which is the junction between the seventh intersegmental artery with the dorsal aorta on the left side, that one has to be disappeared and regress. But what is going to happen? This persists and it is giving rise now double aorta. Now how this is going to possible, and it is forming this vascular ring around the esophagus and trachea. As you know that there is the shortening of the blood vessels, and then they are going to shift higher up as the heart is going to relocate into the thoracic cavity. So these vessels, as this one, this is the left-sided seventh intersegmental artery forming the left subclavian artery, which is due to shortening of these blood vessel, it is going to move up like that, more closer to the left common carotid artery. So when it is going to move up and shifting up towards the common carotid artery also, this is pulling and pushing this portion up as well, which is going to lie behind the esophagus and the trachea. So here this is the normal small left portion forming the arch of aorta from left fourth aortic arch, and this persistent portion, it's shifting up behind the esophagus and stomach and giving rise behind here and other right arch of aorta, and that's how this vascular ring is formed around the trachea and esophagus. So there is definitely the pulsation, and because of this there can be the compression and constriction on these two structures, leading to breathing difficulties and difficulties in swallowing. So the double aortic arch is because of the persistent right portion of the dorsal aorta, which is between the seventh intersegmental artery to the left dorsal aorta, and then it is shifted upwards to form this ring around the trachea and esophagus. Again, this is another picture to show you the double aorta. This portion has to be disappeared and regressed. I hope you understand, and to understand it, you also open up in your book the normal picture where this portion is going to regress with the dotted line. but it persists and then it moves higher up, shifted up, and making this vascular sling. That is double arch of aorta. Now is the right aortic arch. So simple, this is very simple. It has to be formed on the left side, but rather this is going to be formed on the right side because of the left fourth arch and left dorsal aorta, they are obliterated. When these are obliterated on the left side congenitally, this is an abnormality. So what is going to happen? This is replaced by the corresponding vessels on the right side. So right side, right fourth arch and right sided dorsal aorta is going to form this right sided aortic arch. And when this is going to happen, then ligamentum arteriosum, which lies on the left side, and then it passes behind the esophagus to be having its attachment with that arch of aorta. So this is also causing some problems with swallowing. So here in this picture you can see that right sided arch of aorta, how that is possible that on the left side, the left part they are going to obliterate, and then on this right side there is persistent and retention of the right dorsal aorta. Along with that, it is forming this aortic arch. So this aortic arch, when it is formed, then this is the this one is pulmonary artery, from where ligamentum arteriosum is going to pass on and moving on towards the arch of aorta. So here they are replaced by the structures that on the left side, this subclavian artery that is going to form here, and on the right side this arch of aorta is going to be formed. So because there is obliteration of the dorsal aorta on the left side, but there is persistent dorsal aorta on the right side, making up here this arch of aorta. So you can see here another congenital anomaly. It is associated with the abnormal origin of the subclavian artery on the right side, that is aberrant right subclavian artery. So this is abnormal origin of the right subclavian artery when this is formed by the distal portion of the right dorsal aorta. It has to be formed by the proximal portion, but when it is formed by the distal portion of right dorsal aorta and seventh intersegmental artery, then this is known as aberrant right subclavian artery. Then the right fourth aortic arch and the proximal part of the dorsal aorta, they are obliterated. So actually from the distal portion of right fourth arch and the right dorsal aorta, that is making up the right subclavian artery. As you know, on the right side, what is going to happen? The proximal part, which is from the horn of the right sided aortic sac, that is giving rise the brachiocephalic artery, and from the distal portion from the proximal portion of the fourth arch along with dorsal aorta, that is making and giving the right subclavian artery. But what is going to happen? This is derived from distal part of right dorsal aorta and seventh intersegmental artery, because the normally forming subclavian artery, these parts are obliterated. So this is again going to shift upwards and finally it settles. Just going to happen, you can see here in this picture that this one portion, actually this is going to become obliterated, and from the seventh intersegmental artery and the dorsal aorta, the aberrant right subclavian artery is forming. So it is going to shift up, that portion has to move up, and then when this left subclavian artery shifted very close to the common carotid artery on the left side, that part which is now the right sided subclavian artery, this one, this is going to shift up and it is residing very close to the left sided subclavian artery. So as it is going to be formed here, same as you have seen that this portion is forming the arch of aorta, that has to move up and then forming the vascular sling. So this is same situation, but here this is the right sided subclavian artery, and here this is also going to be passing behind the esophagus because this is the right sided subclavian artery. It has its origin from the abnormal components, as normally forming parts of the fourth arch are obliterated, so it is formed from the seventh intersegmental artery and dorsal aorta. So this is going to shift up here and then passing behind the esophagus to reach the right side and to supply the right sided upper limb and areas. So here this is, now you can see very easily, that is the aberrant right subclavian artery. It is abnormally located on the left side. So the next anomaly is the interrupted aortic arch. Interrupted aortic arch is going to be caused by obliteration of the fourth aortic arch on the left side. It has to form it normally, but it is obliterated. So the fourth arch on the left side is obliterated. It is combined with aberrant right subclavian artery, as you have seen in the previous slide, and the ductus arteriosus remains open. The descending aorta and subclavian arteries, so they are going to have the poor oxygen, very low oxygen content in the blood. So here this is the picture which is showing you the interrupted aortic arch. As you have seen here, that there is obliteration of fourth aortic arch, that is obliterated on both sides. So there is abnormal obliteration of the fourth aortic arch, which has to give rise the middle part of arch of aorta. So the portion which is arising from aortic sac, it persists, and then this is forming the proximal portion of aorta, which has its connection with the carotid arteries. So head and neck region is receiving the normal blood flow through this aorta. But here the next, you can see that because of the obliteration of the fourth aortic arch, there is persistent part of the right sided dorsal aorta, which is between the seventh intersegmental artery and towards the left dorsal aorta, where it is making this junction. So this portion persists again, and it is making the aberrant left subclavian artery. As you have already seen, it is shifted up because of the shortening of the blood vessels and settling of the heart and all the blood vessels towards the thoracic region. So this is giving rise this left subclavian artery. So here you can see this interruption, as the middle portion of the arch of aorta is not formed because of obliteration of the fourth aortic arch, which has to form that part of arch of aorta. So normally this part is present from the aortic sac, and the more distal part of arch of aorta, which is from the contribution of the left dorsal aorta, that is also going to be formed. But here you can see that interruption, which is now leading to this congenital problem known as interrupted aortic arch. So here again, along with this aberrant left subclavian artery, you are also going to have persistent ductus arteriosus, through which the pulmonary artery is supplying blood down to the lower limb, but this blood has the, it is very low. So as you have seen that there is the formation of the aortic arches corresponding to pharyngeal arches, and then they are giving rise to the respective derivatives and blood vessels. The vitelline arteries which you have seen, which are from the yolk sac, and as you have seen that the part of the yolk sac is incorporated inside into the formation of the gut tube, the endodermal lined gut tube. So that vitelline vessels, they persist in three areas. and they are giving rise to the arteries which are supplying to the gastrointestinal tract. So here you have seen this portion, which is the portion of the aortic arches. That part, that is the aortic arches, where you have seen now the formation of the carotid arteries and aorta. And then the portion which is from the yolk sac, their vitelline blood vessels are going to give rise the arteries associated with the foregut, midgut and hindgut. And you have seen that these blood vessels are the celiac artery, celiac trunk for the foregut, superior mesenteric artery to the midgut and inferior mesenteric artery to the hindgut. So in these areas, these vitelline arteries, they persist, and then they are responsible to form the these very important 3 main blood vessels to the gut area. Then you have seen that there was the umbilical arteries. There were the paired umbilical arteries which are passing through the umbilical cord, and then these arteries which are responsible to carry the poorly oxygenated blood to placenta. You also know that the proximal part of the umbilical arteries, they are going to become the internal iliac artery and superior vesical artery. I hope you have studied them in the abdomen and pelvic region, that the remnant of the umbilical arteries, its proximal part is giving rise the internal iliac and superior vesical artery, and rest of these umbilical arteries, so that's distal portion, it obliterates and that becomes the medial umbilical ligament. So that is the fate of the vitelline and umbilical arteries in the formation of. So here you have seen that when the dorsal aortae, they are going to unite together and giving rise the single aorta. In the abdomen, then there are the lateral branches from that aorta, and they are going to supply their respective organs which are developing. They are giving rise, here you can see, to the suprarenal gland, to the kidneys and to the gonads. Then these ascend up, you can see kidney first of all is pelvic, then it ascends up reaching towards the pelvic region. So these are giving here the renal arteries, then the gonadal arteries which are going to move down from here, you can see. Then this is descending down, there is descent of the testes as you have seen. So this descends down giving rise the longer course to the gonadal blood vessels. So here these are the lateral branches which are from the aorta when it becomes a single dorsal aorta, and you say that is the descending or abdominal aorta, which is giving rise the respective branches to their organs which are arising developmentally. Then there is another set above that, if you see, there is another sets which are the intersegmental arteries. These intersegmental arteries are the branches from the dorsal aorta which are going to supply, and segmentally they are going to reach towards the somites. So when they are supplying the somites, then in the head and neck region they are becoming the vertebral artery on each side, and then in the thorax these give rise to the intercostal arteries. In the abdomen, intersegmental arteries, they become the lumbar arteries, and they are making the common iliac arteries. So here which you have seen these common iliac arteries, these are actually the intersegmental arteries which are going towards the somites, and these are in the sacral region, they are giving the lateral sacral arteries. The caudal end of dorsal aorta becomes median sacral artery. So all these blood vessels, intercostal and these lumbar and the vertebral arteries, these are actually the intersegmental arteries which are from the dorsal aorta towards the somites. So these are. So I end up here with today's lecture. Then in the next lecture I will move on to the development of the venous system. So the venous system, the inferior vena cava, how they are going to develop, I will discuss in the next lecture. So I hope you understand it very well. Thank you very much.